It's a lot of work. It's a lot of attention to details. And that's what commercial real estate is all about. I don't care what asset class you're in, you have to be at the head of the wheel constantly.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying the show and get some great value, let us hear about it. Leave us a rating and review so we can add that to our show notes. We'd love to share that with other folks so they can find this great show as well. And if you haven't done so, or this is your first time listening, be sure to hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Ben Reinberg. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to kasmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to kasmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, today's guest is known by his peers as a visionary and a futurist. He has always been a step ahead and boldly sets investment trends. Now, he never apologized for being first to market and has been building his fierce reputation as a market maker and negotiator since he started at 23 years old. Now, while other people enter commercial real estate as brokers, at 23 years old, he made the bold move to start as a principal owner. Let's welcome to the show, Ben Reinberg.
Hey, John, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and really appreciate it. I always enjoy being on a real estate podcast. I'm always on different podcasts around the world. And to be on a commercial real estate podcast is like right down the fairway for me. So thank you for having me on. It should be great.
Absolutely, Ben. Great to have you on the show today. I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
So about 30 years ago, I started in commercial real estate, John. I've always been a principal, not a broker. And for people that don't understand that concept is I jumped right in the water. I literally said, I'm going to start owning. Okay. I'm not going to broker. I'm not going to be a middleman. I'm not going to lease. I'm not going to be a tenant rep or a leasing agent or any type of realtor in residential. I'm going right into commercial. I'm going to be a principal. Over the past 30 years, my expertise is office, industrial, and retail. And for a lot of your listeners, our multifamily investors in different realms, whether it's active or passively, we are opening up a brand new multifamily division, which I'm really excited about. It's something we've been looking at for a while. And then we're going to get into other asset classes too, because what we want to do is diversify our investors. We have a lot of investors, accredited investors from around the world that invest with us. And we can take a medical office fund like we have, which is one of our expertise, one of the leaders of medical office, and be able to take capital and diversify investors where they not only could be in a fund with 20 assets and be diversified, but also they can have a menu of industrial, retail, self-storage, multifamily, so they could be more because we have 200 plus years of leadership team experience. We've been doing this a long time. A lot of gray matter between the years in the folks at Alliance, my company, as well as myself. And with that being said, it's a great way to diversify. So that's what we do. We own large portfolio around the United States. We have a concentration, what I call in the smile states. If you took if you took a map of the United States and took Virginia and started drawing a smiley face throughout the South, Southeast, Southwest, Mountain West, and parts of the West Coast. And you're probably going to ask, well, what is a Chicago guy not investing in the Midwest? Well, we started in the Midwest and all the areas that you invest in and your peers, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, because that's where we're from, Indiana. We still do, but really we look at high population growth density because for medical office, which is one of our niches, it's extremely important to look at population growth densities, where are driving young families as well. Where's going to be sustainable growth over the next couple decades? And so we look at these trends and we do a lot of research and due diligence on these markets. And that's our expertise. That's why people invest with us. We have an upper 20s internal rate of return track record. Uh, and our, really who we are as a company speaks for itself. It's not just a Ben Reinberg company. Obviously you can go to my website and see benreinberg.com, my own personal website, and it ties to my company Alliance CGC. But what ends up happening at the end of the day is that you have incredibly talented people. And one of the things that we do, John, that I'm really proud of that separates us is we give a 7-star white glove experience to the investor, which we've been working on for years. We're one of the first companies in the United States to create an investor portal. So we do things a little bit differently. So when you read my bio as a futurist and a visionary, that's what I do. I say, where are the gaps or where are things headed in commercial real estate? And I go and I jump in the water and figure it out in order to move forward and to provide that experience for our investors.
Yeah, Ben, you talked about getting started at 23 years old, really getting into the industry, building it from the ground up as a principal, over 30 years experience focused on kind of the medical space, medical offices, do a little bit of retail, industrial, some other asset classes as well, getting started with the multifamily division and really spending your time trying to figure out where things are headed so you can get into those gaps and start bringing things around so that you and your firm are at the forefront. Your firm, of course, you mentioned your website, benryberg.com, and your firm, alliancecgc.com. We'll link to those in the show notes. Let's take it back, though. I want to go back to that 23-year-old who decided, I want to be a principal. That sounds great, particularly in theory. I think the challenge that many listeners may have, especially if they're of that age, is, well, how do I get the capital to go out there and build this? And then also the knowledge, the expertise. Talk to us about how you're able to overcome some of those challenges. One, were they challenges? But then two, how were you able to launch and get things going at such a young age?
It's a great question, John. I appreciate it because it is challenging. It's challenging when you're younger. I mean, you're defying odds, you're battling potential family, friends, colleagues telling you, you're absolutely crazy. How are you going to raise the money? For me, I just went out and did it. I just, it's hard to go back 30 years and say like, what was that moment like? But I could tell you, I was fearless. What I did was I realized that, well, God forbid I wasn't able to raise the money, John. Where am I? I'm just going back to that young kid who had nothing anyway. So what am I losing by not trying? And so I pulled the trigger. But I also started off with a great deal. And so you got to find a good deal. You got to tie it up. It's expensive to tie up deals. I mean, you got to put up earnest money. You're talking 5, 6 figures are the earnest money deposits we put up in our business. That was always a concern of mine when I was younger. So I'm very mindful to the young person out there listening, saying, well, how do I, as 23 Ben, do what you did? I mean, it wasn't easy. It's not like I just snapped I had to figure it out. I had to figure out I had to borrow money. I had to grind. I had to potentially live at my parents for a few years while I was younger, and the goal is when you're in Chicago, you want to live downtown. That's the goal. It's like, I want to move from the suburbs downtown. That's always the goal in any big city, whether it's New York, Miami, Dallas, you name it. And with that being said, John, is I just worked hard. I built up resources. I asked for referrals. It was a lot different. Back then, like there was no internet and not setting up face-to-face meetings. This stuff we're doing right now, this didn't exist where I could do a Zoom call or a podcast and explain who Ben Reinberg is. So what's great about me, my competitive edge is I know how to communicate. I know how to build relationships. I know how to shake someone's hand, give someone a hug, because that's how I had to do business as a young man, even throughout my career. So for me, this whole technology stuff is an anomaly because technology goes against human behavior. Humans want to connect. People want to shake hands. They want to hug. They want to say, hey, thank you, appreciate it, and look at each other eye to eye. And it's different. So if we did this interview in person, think of how much we would connect even more. And that was the difference. So for me, the real challenge is getting in front of people. What's beneficial to the 23-year-old that's out there listening, or 22 or 24, however old you are man or woman, doesn't matter, is you have more leverage, which is a big term in my world with my new TV show that came out, is leverage is everything. You have more leverage now to reach more people quickly with technology than we've ever had in the history of this world. And so just to be able to go out there, I can't live with excuses because I didn't have all these advantages that these young guys have out there now. So for me, like I'm the last guy who's going to say, well, how do I do it? Blah, blah, blah. You have every advantage to do it. You have every, you guys are savvy with technology that are sitting out there. I'm still learning, CRMs and funnels and marketing and stuff. And yes, it is capital intensive to do marketing. However, you guys can go out there and create social media campaigns, just like I did. I got on social media 2 years ago, John. So I was always on LinkedIn because Jeff Weiner's from Chicago, and LinkedIn was huge in Chicago when he first started. And I believed in it. I loved it when he first came out with it. And now it's huge. So between LinkedIn and all these different marketing pieces, I don't think there's much excuses not to get started. I think you could figure out, you could leverage into guys like me. People can follow me, and because all I'm doing is bringing content, and that content contains value and knowledge. So only content I put out in the internet, in social media, it's got to have some sort of value. It's got to have a call to action. It's got to be a way to show you how to build wealth. And that's what I do. I give all this value. Value is what I preach to myself and my staff and the people in my inner circle. And so for people out there, if you want to get started in commercial real estate, here's the best way. I think this is the number one way. I figured this out is if you invest in our fund or one of our deals, you're going to see live how commercial real estate is managed. You're going to see the deals we do. You're going to see how returns are calculated. You're going to see a full process. Okay. So when people always ask me, like, how do I get started? If you have a little bit of money, you can invest in something that Alliance does. You will get your feet wet in commercial real estate. And as you start building your wealth, then you could say, okay, I want to do this on my own, or I want to invest in this asset classes, or I'm going to buy a Wendy's or a McDonald's, a net lease passive. I'm going to do a threeplex or a fourplex, with the money I've generated from Alliance. There's different ways to do it. And I found a way that it's like, if you really want to learn the business from a sophisticated level and then bring it down, is to invest with us, because then you're going to really see how the business works, because it's sophisticated. There's a lot of moving parts going on, John.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ben, I always tell people that there are three ways to get into this business. One is doing it by yourself, which has its own built-in challenges. The second is through a partnership or a JV. The third is through investing passively, right? Being a syndicator, working with a group or an operator who's looking to do that. And that's a great path for anyone to get in. To rewind that back, you talked about when you were getting started, it took a lot of work, right? You had to do a lot of face-to-face meetings, a lot of conversations. What I am and what I think was implied is that you didn't have all the capital you needed to do these deals. So you had to find investors and you had to work with people. Did you start with the idea that this is a business I'm going to launch and grow and develop, or did it start with an actual deal or an investment opportunity, and then you had to go out there and find the money to invest in this property?
Well, I knew that I wanted to do a wealth building business. Okay. In Chicago, with all the icons in Chicago in commercial real estate, I watched and I said, that's a business I want to be in, because that's where wealth building is. It's not about getting rich, it's wealthy, and it's creating impact. And that's what I wanted to do. And so when I was younger, John, I realized, and I said, okay, well, I need to find my first asset and then continue from there. And so it's evolved. I've pivoted. I've opened up different asset classes. I continue to learn and grow. And you have to continue to learn and grow. Even at the age of 54, and I've been wildly successful, I still continue to grow. I pretend I'm that 23-year-old Ben Reinberg because I never want to lose that fire in me. I never want to lose that edge. And so people ask me, like, you still show up to the office early and go to the office every day? Absolutely. I'm sitting here right now in Newport Beach in my West Coast office. I'm here and I have probably 8 Zoom meetings after this. I'm ready to grind. And so you have to continue to work. You have to continue to work on yourself. And it doesn't stop. The work doesn't stop. And one thing that I did to help your audience is I was able to borrow credibility. And if you follow me on social media, I talk about this. And I recently did a post I was speaking on stage recently in Orlando, and they posted my team. And it's a great post because you have to think about, especially when you're younger and getting started, how can I borrow credibility? Okay. So, for example, if you find an investor to invest in your first deal, how can I borrow credibility to find more investors? That's a real important concept. So, I teach all these concepts. I do a lot of mentoring. I have a lot of young people that reach out to me, which I enjoy. And so, it's to me is start slow, c- continue to work on yourself, continue to stack your experiences, which I talk about, and take notes. I'm a big note taker. I mean, if you saw my office, I have notepads, legal pads from years of experience. And it was before we were able to take notes online and stuff and databases. But at the end of the day, I write things down. It's good for my subconscious. It makes me think about things. And you start developing. And so I think of ideas before anyone else because I've been doing this a long time. I'm like, what if we did this? Or what if we change this? Or I don't like the way this is going. But what's great for your audience to know is that if you're the person on the line, the man or woman, that the buck stops here with you, you'll start leading, you'll start developing into the person you want. But you have to jump in the water and start doing it if you want to do it. And I like, and it's very challenging to get in this business. And so I always like it. I like the strategy of invest with Alliance first and see how it works. And because you might get through it and you're like, I can't believe all the variables that your staff deals with. I can't believe all the letters we have to read and all the variables and all the because once you see how the business works and you see, hey, we lost a tenant or we have this challenge, because the business is full of challenges. And I'm going to tell you, in any business you have challenges. You got to be solutionary oriented, John, in anything you do. But especially in commercial real estate, if you want to see live what challenges look like and the daily activities and the headaches and everything and how to manage properties, you invest. And that way you can watch. Because a lot of people, what I see is they like to invest passively with us because once they start getting in the weeds and they see all the details that go on, they're like, well, I don't have time with that. That's not something I'm really passionate about or love. And if you don't love commercial real estate, what we do, you will lose because you have to be in it to win it on a daily basis, 7 days a week. And we work hard at the Folks Alliance. I'm extremely proud of these men and women that work here because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of attention to details. And that's what commercial real estate is all about. I don't care what asset class you're in. You have to be at the head of the wheel constantly.
Ben, you talked about your experience, right? And one, the value you provide for the folks you mentor, the investors, they get to see what's going on and learn what it's like running these deals from that experience. You've been around for 30 years in the commercial real estate space and you're investing in different asset classes. From your view, obviously the economy is always changing and we're in a different part of the cycle now, but how do you identify when to pivot or change strategies or tactics based on the changes from an economic standpoint?
Well, I'll give you an example. So we're opening a multifamily division because there's going to be $1.4 trillion of notes coming due in 2025. And with that being said, there's a lot of residential, multifamily real estate in those portfolios. And so we see a lot of opportunities that people are going to have to sell, and we want to be at the forefront with our capital. And but when we got into medical office years ago, 20 years ago in our 30-year experience, John, we looked at it and said, what can provide consistent cash flow that's safe, secure investing with profitable investments, upside, as we call it in the business. And medical office was perfect because the human body never goes out of style. And I say that. And so we invest in, and we're one of the largest medical office investors out there. And what happens is that we look at all the different niches that you and your family would go to and attend. And so it could be anywhere from gastro to pediatrics to surgery centers to hospitals, you name it, is what we own in the portfolio. dialysis. And that was a pivot we made because at that time we said, well, we can't project IRRs all the time. What can provide more safe, secure investing that we could diversify our investors' capital? And that's how medical office came about. Same thing 9 years ago, a friend of mine called me and said, Ben, why aren't you investing in veterinarian office? And we said, oh, that's interesting. Let's look at that. We started looking at it. It's comparable to medical office. It fits our portfolio. All of a sudden, we started going gangbusters. We love veterinarian office. So our new fund, the Alliance Medical Fund, is not only medical, but will contain veterinarian as well. And so it's even more diversified, which is great. So we look at what's going on in the economy, what's going on with niches, and things change. I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I thought I was going to be like this real estate maven who owned huge office towers around the world, like Sam Zell. That was my thought. I'm going to be a younger version of him. He's from Chicago. I'm going to do it too. I see how wealthy he's become. He's been a master. God forbid he passed away years ago. And what happened was I saw the world change, technology changed. We had more people working remotely and from home and from coffee shops and tablets and phones. And technology started developing more and more and became more robust and more abundant in our lifestyles. So all of a sudden, general office changed. And I had to open my eyes and say, well, I'm not going to be the skyscraper king I thought I was going to be. I'm going to be someone else. And so industrial came into play and all these niches. So I'm constantly evolving in our company as we're constantly learning and growing and pivoting and listening to the market. We're good listeners, which is important. And I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of listening. You know, I got 2 ears and 1 mouth. I want to listen. And I do a lot of that. And I encourage everyone out there is one thing that I had to learn when I was younger is be real respectful to people and be grateful and appreciate people, but be a good listener because that person that's been in the business will teach you something from something they say that will impact your career. And you have to use leverage. Leverage is everything. It's more powerful than money. Leverage is communicating, listening, using technology, reading, discipline. You know, I don't drink, John, very disciplined. I'm into health and fitness. All this creates leverage. Leverage is everything. And if your audience is listening, use leverage. And I'm not talking about putting debt on properties. Yeah, that's leverage in our business. We all know that. I'm talking about using your mind, using your body, your health, your communication skills, focus, persistence. All these things create leverage. Leverage is everything. It will always be that way. I don't care if AI comes into the scene, which we're all working on and we're all looking at it and we all see what's going to impact, how it's going to impact our future. But at the end of the day, everything's going to need human communication, even though machines are going to have a more impact than what we're doing.
And I appreciate that. You talked about, how you got in the medical office, recognizing that, hey, there may be a different opportunity, looking at wanting to have a large office building portfolio and recognize that, hey, there's some changes that are happening in the professional landscape, more work from home, more technology that kind of moves you to medical, industrial, some other asset classes. And you said something about, always being learning, right? Leverage, understanding that there's a lot of tools, resources, individuals around us. Leverage that because leverage is everything. You have 30 years experience, which we talked about. You're still learning. What sources do you go to get your information so that you can stay on top of what's coming and what's next?
Well, what I do is we are constantly looking at deals every week. And so my number one goal is to give the investor the best experience in anything they can do in life. And that's why we have great relationships with our investors. And so my job is to tap into resources and knowledge. So we're talking to brokers every day. We're talking to appraisers, engineers. Um, we're talking to cities, municipalities. We're talking to our tenants, what's going on, whether it's in healthcare or whatever their niche is. Say we own an industrial and they're a packaging company. Whatever it is, we're doing our homework. The work never stops. I just gave a talk to thousands of people And one of the things I told them was the work doesn't stop. The more successful you get, the more work you have to do. And so for everyone out there listening, is the work doesn't stop. That's why people want to invest with us passively, because human nature is I rather just take my capital invest. Alliance, you do all the heavy lifting. And so I could just take my quarterly preferred return payment, my tax benefits, and my profits. Great. We love those type of people. But if you're going to own a business, I don't care if it's commercial real estate or you're selling widgets, the work doesn't stop. It never will, and it never does. And you can't take that for granted. And so at the end of the day, John, it's extremely important that you do your homework. There's a lot of software out there that we all use in commercial real estate that you can use, but the key is to go boots on the ground, go tour properties. I get this question asked every single day. Like, Ben, do you go see your portfolio? Because you don't really need to. Do you go see it? I see every single acquisition. I see every property that we own in our portfolio across asset classes. I travel all over the United States. I talk to our lenders. I want to know so that futurist side me can say, when do we have to pivot? What should we be doing differently with our properties? Okay, well, LEED certification was big years ago. Do we have to do some of that? How do we deal with our lenders? What's the best way to produce cash flow for our investors? So I'm always looking from an investor standpoint is how am I going to produce a great result with them? It's staying on top, doing my homework, doing the traveling, getting out there, using shoe leather, not technology. Because technology, the problem is I can go look at a property online, right? But I don't really get the essence of the area. I like to drive areas, I like to canvas it. That 20-year-old Ben Reinberg is how I learned the business. And that was shoe leather, boots on the ground, seeing the property, talking to tenants, talking to the area, seeing what the challenges are, because I'm in the business of mitigating risk for investors and lenders that do business with us. And that is what I am outstanding at. And because of that, it's because I do the research, I do the work, I go boots on the ground, I'll travel. So, for example, if I'm in your market in Cincinnati and I'm going to buy a medical property, I want to go see it. I want to see what's the dynamic of the tenants. What's my competition? I go back to the real estate fundamentals. And people look at it and they start throwing out these terms like cap rates and this and that. Most people don't understand what's behind it. And it's very intrinsic. Once you start unpacking what that really means, because people are like, well, I want tax benefits. They don't understand even what that means. And so you really have to educate people. But you also, the one thing I love about this business is every year you get better and better, stronger and stronger. And by the time you're my age in your 50s, you become lethal because you're in your prime of your career. Commercial real estate investing is an experienced person's business. It'll always be that way. You have to go through different cycles. You have to go through different value creation. You have to go through different employees, different technology cycles. So when you understand that, that will start allowing you to pivot to be able to make great decisions. My job as the leader of Alliance, as I sit on top of this thing, is to make the investors experience a 7-star experience and protect their capital. And that's what's great about what we do. Because I say, John, and this is something I say online, and it's something near and dear to my heart, and I say this to all my employees throughout the United States that work at Alliance. The day we stop valuing every penny that an investor ever invested with us, we should not be doing what we're doing. It's not right. And what that means is, you and I are both from the Midwest. And you know what it's like in February when there's snow and ice and it's cold. Well, think of the man or woman, especially in Chicago, I would say, like, would come from the suburbs and commute downtown to earn a living and get a paycheck. And then all of a sudden they invest it with you, John. If you don't appreciate those moments, that grinding that goes on like all of us do, and you're not humble and value it, shouldn't be a fiduciary of capital. Because that allows you, that sentiment, that mindset says, okay, we're going to be solution oriented. We're going to communicate till we're blue in the face to our investors. We're going to tell them the good and the bad. We're going to do everything possible to make their experience 100% just incredible for them. That's the game changer. But it starts with the foundation of that gratitude of appreciating every single penny someone invests with you. And the day you stop is the day you got to walk out of the door of commercial real estate. Now, the good thing for me is I value it. I totally value it. I invest with my investors. I invest in our funds. I see the hard work that goes on because I've had to grind to make money and to be successful. So same with all our investors. So again, it goes back to the work doesn't stop, and you have to
Yeah.
be very mindful of that.
I love two things you said. One was just the gratitude of recognizing your investors have worked hard for their money and they are entrusting you with their money and they're wanting you to help them grow, right? So you have to value that. You know, if you want to raise capital, if you want to be an operator, if you want to be someone who is scaling your business, you have to really value and cherish the investor capital. So I appreciate you sharing it and underscoring that. The second thing you talked about was the way you learn, the way you stay fresh, the way you continue to be on top of what's happening in the industry and the economy is being boots on the ground, going to see your properties, talking to the locals, talking to your peers, other investors, you know, making sure that you are out there and having these engagements. That allows you to get real-time feedback. And sometimes it could be something small. You know, you could be on site or touring a property and there's a little comment or you see something that you didn't see before, or you see a development taking place that wasn't there, you know, the last time you were there. And now you're starting to gain a little bit of market knowledge or insider knowledge of what's really happening in a location, and that can't be replicated. You know, you can certainly read articles and look at data points and all that kind of stuff, but nothing beats, you know, boots on the ground, touring it and seeing it with your own eyes. I used to work at an advertising agency, and we used to have a quote, and the quote was about discovery, and it was basically about, you know, you can see what other people have seen, right? But and I forgot how to, I'm messing the quote up, but it was discovery was looking at what other people have seen, but seeing something different, right?
That's right.
And if you can recognize that opportunity or see something others have missed as an investor, that's what we're doing. We all see the building, right? We all know that there's a building here and it generates XYZ profits. But if you have the opportunity to create more value, that's what's going to allow you to stand out. When you are looking at opportunities in today's market, is there anything you're either completely avoiding or anything that when you see it, you pounce on that opportunity?
Well, I'm avoiding general office, obviously, because the margins have compressed. Um, and I don't have time to get into that, but when it follow me online and you'll understand. Uh, where I see is, we love medical office because the human body's never going out of style, and that's something we're really focusing on. But for me, I think in this market, there's been such a gap between the bid and the ask in commercial real estate. People are still feeling that interest rates are low. And so one thing we're doing is we're paying a lot of cash for deals, or we're going to create a debt fund for investors where we can finance our own properties and let our investors be in first position, which I think is really cool. So those are the things we're gravitating to and that we're looking for. But in this market, it's a very challenging market. Things are still expensive, but that's going to change soon. With all these loans coming due and this paper coming due, it's going to create a rippling effect in our business. So keep pushing forward for everyone out there. Keep looking at deals, keep learning. You know, one of the things that we didn't talk about is being vulnerable, because when you can ask, I don't care how old you are, you just ask around like, hey, tell me what's going on in your market, or where do you see market rents are for this property? Uh, who's my competition? Let's say it's multifamily. How much do I have to pay for a door? What does this market do? Is it paint and carpet when the lease turns? Lease is usually a year average in this multifamily. So we understand all this. What's vacancy rates? What's absorption rates for any piece of commercial real estate? So at the end of the day, something that everyone can take away is understand the real estate fundamentals. They will never change in your career. I don't care what market it is, whatever. A lot of people ignore that. Where I see sponsors and people that invest in commercial real estate go wrong is they don't value the foundation. They don't value, people don't teach this, which is why I think I should teach this more and more is the real estate fundamentals are everything. Vacancy rates, absorption rates, what's market rent. Because if I have a tenant that turns, say, and here's the misnomer. I might have a 15-year lease. That doesn't mean the tenant's staying 15 years. They might default. They might say, you know what, Ben, we're consolidating. We've seen this. We're consolidating. Yeah, we're 5 years in, but you know what? Go ahead. We're going to sublease it. We'll let you lease it. And if you find a tenant, we'll do a termination agreement. Go back. I thought I had a 15-year lease. Absolute not. Great credit tenant. Things change. You have to build up reserves. You have to adhere to real estate fundamentals. In my career, John, and I could say this, is I've never ever had a capital call in one of our deals, in all our deals. Now, will that happen down the road? It could, but to date, we haven't. The reason why is because we adhere to the fundamentals, having enough reserves, making sure we prepare for the rainy days, vacancy, whatever. A lot of people, especially younger in the business, didn't learn the business that way. They said, okay, well, I'm going to invest in commercial real estate and roll the dice and hopefully my investors will make money. Well, wait a minute. Your job is also to mitigate risk and you got to underwrite it properly. And I think underwriting is something that needs to be worked on with some of the generations out there because I see it. And I see it because when the brokers come out with deals and they say, well, the guy wants a 6 cap. How did you value that? How did you underwrite it? Well, I don't know. It's a hard deal to buy if the seller is being represented by someone that doesn't understand the fundamentals. And I see that a lot. And that's why it makes the market challenging. Some of the brokers out there make it more and more challenging because they're not putting in the work. They're not becoming experts in the business. They're more becoming shepherds to a commodity, which it's not a commodity.
Yeah. Ben, great stuff. I know we're running short on time here. So for those folks who have enjoyed the conversation, want to learn more, you can go to benreinberg.com. We'll link to that in the show notes. Ben, I want to thank you for being a great guest to come on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, John. Appreciate being on.